So good afternoon. So people outside can come inside. We can start the last session of the day. I think the previous panel session ideally set the stage for us to discuss about creating new business model for the digital economy. Now I would like to ask a question. How many of you watched the Apple event last night? Only 2 people. All right. So I annually watch the Apple event and all the tech events. And typically it's very boring. But last night, they unveiled something very significant. They launched their new Apple Watch, Series 4. And of course, they launched the iPhone as well, which just another update. But the Apple Watch they launched, and a particular feature they enable in that watch, I found it very disruptive. Imagine now you can do your electronic cardiogram, ECG, on your Apple Watch. That's a huge disruption. Now this fundamentally changed the way medical professionals deliver healthcare services. A completely new business model is going to emerge as an outcome of this. Now, when Apple does this, everybody follows suit. That's the thing, no? Like the Fitbits and Androids, and everybody now incorporate this capability of doing your own ECG on your wearable device. Now, when these things initially came, it was just a lifestyle device and a fitness tracker. But today, with yesterday's announcement, this is going to transform into a medical device. Now, this is the power of digital. Now, overnight, entire healthcare system, all the healthcare providers, the laboratories, the hospitals must be now concerned, my goodness, what's going to happen to our ECG service? So this is the kind of level of disruption, and we need to understand what kind of new business models that can be created as a result of this. So the whole plenary is about how you create value and deliver value, leveraging digital. To start off with, I would like to invite Liyanwela, because Dee's presentation is about taking Sri Lanka into the digital age and how you create new business model. I don't want to talk about Dee. Dee is someone I know for some time. He's a man with extensive experience in the capital market space. He's instrumental in setting up London Stock Exchange Group's Sri Lankan hub. It's the first offshore center, if I'm not mistaken. So I would like to ask Dee to give the opening keynote. Dee.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Harsha, for that kind introduction. So I hope I can drive this forward and backwards. In terms of what we want to discuss today, I thought I'll just talk about what is digital economy, because there are so many acronyms and phrases that we deal with on a daily basis. This is also one of those ones that's slightly confusing and could be misconstrued, so we'll talk about that a little bit. And I think it's important and helpful to understand why digital economy. What's the big deal about it? Why are we talking so much about it, etc.? I'm sure that lots of sessions talked about the importance for the economy and the businesses, etc., but I'll touch on that again, if I may. And I'll touch on Sri Lanka's digital economy. There are a few things I think we can talk about there, and what should we do to transform. Let's start with what is digital economy. Apologies about the quite busy slide here. The best way I sort of make sense to myself is that if you just talk about economy in general, what one talks about is production of products, services, and consumption thereof, right? That's general economy. If you put digital into it, that's exactly what it is. And that's the best way to define what digital economy is. I'll add one more thing to it. Consumption of products, services, I might even say platforms. There are a couple of people, I mean, Dulith's very qualified to talk about platforms here. There are a number of platforms homegrown, so I think, therefore, that's probably the definition one could think of. And also in conceptualizing, it's important to understand how this concept is put together. When we talk about economy, digital economy, there are key enablers that one needs to have before you can talk about actually creating an economic advantage. Those enablers are the basic computing, which is network connectivity, etc., which is what those sort of three circles on the left talks about. And of course, on top of the enablers, connectivity, end-user computing, the data center servers, who I think we have got to a fairly good standard. I think there's quite a lot to do locally in Sri Lanka. And then the core services one we built on. Three things I think are quite important here, not that others are not less important. Governance, security, and data are very important core attributes on top of the enablers. And then comes the innovation of products and services. And that's kind of how I certainly conceptualize and think about it. I'm not going to go in too much into it. Hopefully you get an understanding. I think the last thing I want to leave you with here is, it is practically anywhere. I'll talk a little bit more about it, but there are two different ways that it's helpful to think about digital. One is that enhancing and transforming existing industries and how you go about doing things, which you would have spoken about today, throughout the day. And of course, disrupting and reimagining, which is where really the sort of paradigm shift is in terms of digital. So that's a quick definition. In terms of why, this is, again, there's lots of text here, but let me just give you a bit of an understanding. So why you can innovate a lot around digital. You might have heard of Industry 4.0 acronyms, like that, which essentially means seamlessly integrating people and the machines. I've heard in the previous one, it's easy to talk about these things when you're a large company, but if you're a small to medium-sized company, how realistic is it to do that? Innovation can happen at multiple levels. What I would say to that particular thing, I heard some discussions going on, is actually you can start quite small. Gathering data is the important thing, and data's been spoken about in multiple ways. If you have sufficient amount of data, even if you're a small company, you're on your way towards digitizing. So one fundamental fact is it's more innovation. And the second thing is, or it enables you innovation. Second thing is business acceleration. There's two ways to look at this. There's the classic revenue or business acceleration, and there's the cost efficiency. On both sides of things, it sounds like panacea. Actually, it's possible to do both. So, I mean, if you're a company still doing random mail shots, you haven't really got what the digital age brings it to you, right? So hopefully there aren't many here. Even if it's a mail shot, you can target it in such a way that you really understand what the customer needs, and you can do a much better job of it. So there are a number of ways, once you understand why a business exists, what is the particular customer need that you're trying to satisfy, then you know how to accelerate using innovation. That's the first part of the thinking. The latter part is then once you when you know the processes and whatever the procedures, technology that you have in satisfying that need, bringing digital into actually creating efficiencies is the second part. So that's the business acceleration. I mean, I'll talk about more later on in the slides. It creates employment, simple fact. UK stats shows that the digital economy created jobs twice as faster than the standard economy. We certainly have that capability here if you were to adapt that. Economic growth, there are a number of examples in here. It adds to the real GDP, real value of the economy. There's a great case study which I'll show you a snippet of. Ghana, of all countries, right? African country, Ghana, you know, adopted a sort of high-level digital initiative. It was one of those examples that a PPP example, public partnership initiative in Ghana. It added 8.5% to their GDP, that particular initiative itself, a very quick time. So real benefits there. And something that pet project or key pet hobby of mine is to understand how e-governance can help. so e-government can help. So better governance is another key output of digitization. So, I mean, government can play essentially, hopefully we'll get to discuss this later on with Harsha and the panel, is that broadly I think about in two ways the government can help. Obviously the enablers, the policy and the environment, the framework that you create to actually enhance the digitization, digital economy. And government as a consumer can do a lot. This is the government. This is where all the paying for utilities, your submission of taxes, etc., comes from. There are a lot of governments doing that because they see the benefit of government as a consumer enables the local businesses to then innovate and actually provide these services. On the other hand, it creates, if you create the appropriate policies, then you create the right climate. There's a lot to talk about there, but we'll see what we can do. So that's the case, if you will. So here are some real stats. I've sort of alluded to a couple of things here. A real mixed bag. T-Mobile obviously is a business, as you probably know. It's a global mobile business. This particular case study, which I found really interesting, is T-Mobile US. There's doing some really interesting things. The new CIO, he's not new anymore, a few years in I think now, when he came and took a look, first thing he tackled was the traditional software development QA process. So they created an end-to-end process, automated all of that, and then realized they're sitting on a mountain of data. Without that, you can't truly digitize. So what he did was they put it on, created this big data initiative, put most of it on cloud. Actually, the simple fact that transformed their businesses, they actually enabled the entire organization to access the customer database or customer data or attributes thereof. And that just generally transformed it. They've took it to the next step where they actually then connected the suppliers, where you might have your advertising companies and marketing companies, etc., who know what campaigns to run against what customer segments, so on and so forth. So, and that 15% increase in productivity. Of a company of that size, I'll let you look up revenues, etc. That's a significant thing. Ghana is a great case. I really love this one because this is a country who's considered third world, actually taking the initiative and moving it forward. 8.5% GDP is a significant number, even in sort of Ghanaian terms or African economy, size of the economy terms. UK, I mean, there's a plethora of studies, twice as fast as job creation. That 97 billion number is quite significant. I mean, I have not seen, it's called Digital Nation, the initiative that UK runs. I have not seen the latest numbers that it's been adding sort of 70, 80, and suddenly we hit 97 billion, the contribution to the economy in 2015, and it carries on. There's another case study which I'll show you hopefully if I got time is, so UK had these two strands of strategy. There's a first 5-year digital strategy, which is Digital Nation, which practically changed the game in terms of policies, enabling financing, tax benefits, etc. So it created the policy framework suddenly. There are parts of London you would know are doing lots of little companies sprouted. It's like a little California. And suddenly there's a lot of innovation going on. So that's the government part in terms of enabling the policy framework, and government themselves became a consumer of the services because it digitized lots of the online services. Great case study there. On education, you can see the stat, 84% surveyed believes that actually the education is better because it's online. So great insight into what you can do in that sector. I wouldn't go through all of it, but one I will pick on is Singapore. This is something that I always talk about as a nation, which is, if you draw parallels against Sri Lanka, this is a great one to compare ourselves to. I usually pick Singapore to talk about capital markets. Reason is this: if you look at Singapore, I mean, you would know about Singapore. It's not a great landmass. It's not a sizable population. There are no natural resources to speak about, yet it's one of the richest nations today. And one of the key things that they did, I don't know, in 70s, by the time when we were going to creating a free market economy, etc., in Sri Lanka, we were leading the way. Unfortunately, we fell back due to all the troubles you know of. Singapore carried on. One of the key things that they did is they freed up the markets, created great capital market infrastructure, created institutions that people can trust, therefore the capital flowed in, both into the country and through the country, right? So one of the key things I keep talking about that Sri Lanka has to do is to create great capital market infrastructure. That's exchanges, risk managers, settlement houses, etc. The second example here is, interestingly, you would read about, if you go online, research on Singapore, they have, I think it's called Committee on Future Economy. They've created a separate, I mean, these guys know what to do, I'm telling you. They created a Committee on Future Economy, and they have a very strong digital agenda, very focused. They know exactly what they're going to do, when they're going to do it, etc. So 53,000 is one number, is a job creation number. You have plethora of stats, and they're going for it. I mean, it's a great nation in terms of infrastructure. It's a trusted economy and a great workforce in terms of education. So there are some case studies there for you. Moving on, I think the best way to talk about, I found, about Sri Lanka and where we are and what we can do is to compare ourselves with the rest of them. This is sort of bunch. There's a benchmark, and there are nations who are close to us, Singapore being key one. So e-government I talked about, this is where we stand. So we can do a lot better. A lot of people do a comparison with India and say, look how well we're doing in some of these stats, and you'll see that we're doing better than India. But I don't think it's a true comparison in terms of the size of the population, size of the country, of we are, and India is not a true comparison. To make that sort of a breakthrough and a change in India is much harder, I would say. That's not to let the politicians off the hook there, but you get the idea. So e-government, we can do a lot more. Online service index, I think we're doing reasonably well, honestly. This is not patting ourselves on the back for the size of we are, but I think we can do a lot better there too. Exports, here's one that we personally have been working on, trying to bring real dollars into the country, both from FDI perspectives and exporting the talent that we have here. I think we can do a lot better. I mean, look at Singapore, $179 billion. For the size of the country it is punching way above its weight, way above. I don't see why we cannot do that. So that's one way of looking at it. Now, a few other stats. Infrastructure index. Arguably, again, we're better than India, but if you look at Singapore as a benchmark, we're way below. So, I mean, there's no excuse for not lighting up Sri Lanka in terms of Wi-Fi. That's the first thing we need to think about. And whether your government or local, however we collaborate, we have to light up Sri Lanka. Every corner of the island has to be Wi-Fi enabled. That's absolutely fundamental as far as I'm concerned. We should be thinking about Wi-Fi in terms of how we think about electricity. Funnily enough, we have not still cracked that, but here's a chance to do that. We'd see the transformation that happens when we get people online. Mobile subscription, when I first saw this, I couldn't believe it. I mean, a few years ago now, but I mean, amazing stat. But leveraging that is the key. If you have that many people online and hooked up, are we leveraging that capability to move forward? So that's a key driver. I think we should all. I mean, there are a number of companies here who are doing that really well. So nevertheless, I think we can do a lot more there. I'm just keeping an eye. Apparently, my time's over, Harsha. I'm going to carry on and hopefully take about another 5 minutes, if that's okay. And another thing that we should leverage on is our literacy and education. We can do a lot more in terms of transforming the education landscape, but where we are, the reason why we have this audience here as well as talking about these things is our education standards are good. Our companies have products that can compete globally. I know for a fact because we have product and services companies that we run out of here, and we truly compete globally. So why wouldn't we do that? But I think there's more to be done there if you were to compete, be much more competitive rather. This might be my final slide. Let me, actually penultimate one. So this is that e-government initiative I talked about. I mean, how would we do that, and why? What is the best way to think about it? I found this model quite helpful. friend of mine or colleague of mine actually wrote a paper for an organization, and sort of he came up with this model. I mean, this is nothing revolutionary about it, but it helps to conceptualize it this way. So the government, as I said, has to play a pivotal part in two ways. One as a consumer, which is the e-government initiative that we talked about, and one as a policymaker who creates the environment. And we need to be honest and open about to have this discussion. And the best ways, most of the governments, when you look around the world, how they've done it is they collaborated with the industry in an honest and open way. You know, we as an industry cannot leave it to the government. The government should not say, look, we'll create the policy, just back off and leave it to us. I think it's true collaboration is the key. PPP type of initiatives works really well, and it has proven to have done so. And the other role is obviously government as a consumer. I think we could do a lot more here to utilize the taxpayers' money appropriately to create real efficiencies in the economy. And it has that dual-edged benefit, as I said. Ideally, that business should go to the local companies where the companies innovate, they get a chance to innovate, as well as the general population benefits from such efficiencies. And obviously the businesses then, as well as the e-government initiatives, if the government creates the right policies and the framework, the people like us benefit who are doing business here. And consumers in a general sense, government could be a consumer, businesses could be a consumer. So in terms of business models, this triumvirate has to work quite well. I mean, it's heartening to see conferences such as these being organized, and we talk about these things. Hopefully some actions come out of these and people follow up and do their own thing, and move us forward. So, and I'll end with a couple of case studies just touching on. I talked about, even I can't see it, so I'm not quite sure how you'd be able to read it. There are a few here. I talked about Ghana, which is up there in the partnerships category. Government services category is Uruguay. Uruguay is also have done a similar initiative right at the top. It's driven by the president, set a target of 2020 to digitize the government services. So they're going after it. All those services are being done. Ghana, Africa. And another one, this cybersecurity one is a quite interesting one, which is the second phase of that digital nation strategy of the UK. Very clear targets are being set to become the safest online nation to do business in the world. So there's a lot of investment going in the UK to do that. In fact, twice as much as what the government has spent previously. And M-Pesa is another great case study in Kenya that's actually transforming. So there's a few examples to sort of highlight the points that I've been talking about. I think that's me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dee. I think one of the things which I picked up from Dee's slide was taking some of the Sri Lankan ICT products global. So next speaker is someone who has created a digital product, and she's taking that product global, competing with the best of the best. And she's very passionately involved with it. And she truly believes Sri Lanka can compete in the global space, in the digital space, and win. So I will not take much time. I'll invite Lakmini to share her story.
Thanks very much, Harsha, for the kind words. So I'm Lakmini Wijesundera, and my companies are IronOne Technologies and BoardPack. So the topic being, new businesses in the digital economy. I'm going to focus on it. It's a wide thing, and Dee quite rightly explained a lot of the concepts. So I'm going to jump in right into a particular aspect that is important, I believe, for us as a nation. And me being an entrepreneur, this is an area that I've been working very closely on. So it's making global brands. So here you'll see a bunch of global brands, and I'll describe what the context of it is. But if you start off, again, Dee was describing some of the statistics, like 120% of mobile penetration, things like that. But I recently read that there's only 6 million people in our country, out of the 22 million people, who are internet users. Most of them, the internet users, are coming from desktops. So there's huge potential, really, untapped in this country. And if you take the credit card usage, apparently it's only 5%. If you take internet usage from basically making payments on internet, that's only about 1%. I could be wrong, but I think it's in those ranges. So literally, the potential is 99%. And as a country, there's a lot to improve in Sri Lanka. Having said that, we are in Asia. There's about 4.5 billion people around, close by. A flight is only like 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours away. And that's really where my interest, and I believe I'd like more people in Sri Lanka to look at that, to consider not just Sri Lanka, but the countries around us. So coming back to this, again, these are some of the brands that are in the Forbes 100. So all of us think of Forbes brands as not Sri Lankan. I don't know of any Sri Lankan brand that is in the Forbes right now, in this range. It's something we've resigned to. And if you look at these brands, we are seeing a lot more Asian brands coming into this. It's not just US brands. So from that concept, and going into the next topic of unicorns. And I believe everybody knows what a unicorn is. That's a $1 billion valued startup. And there's a lot, I mean, if you look at the percentage, there's about 58 unicorns from Asia. I believe more than 10 of them are from India, for example. Rest of them mostly are from China, even Thailand, Vietnam, etc. has these. But Sri Lanka, again, doesn't have a single. So this is the point. I mean, there's no reason why Sri Lanka can't have it. It's a mindset. This is a little topic I want to mention. It's something that happened recently, and this is related to the digital economy, where speed of creating customers is literally overnight. Because of the digital economy, it's possible for a smaller company to basically take on a giant. So WeChat, I believe a lot of you know, it's a company that in 2017 even was ranked higher than Facebook. $500 billion of valuation was given to it. I mean, it's a giant. But then this company called Bullet recently came, and I just put a headline that was there on internet. So Bullet, China's latest messaging app, pops a shot at WeChat. I mean, who'd think that you can do such a thing? But it's possible, it's happened. So next couple of slides, I'm just gonna go through some of the things we are doing and the kind of business models we are following in BoardPack, which is a Sri Lankan brand in the digital economy. We are utilizing these particular premises to create an impact across the globe. So having said that, we have to start off with deciding what kind of business model we are planning. I mean, are we going to be local? Are we going to do about 5 or 10 countries in the region? Are we going to go global? I mean, these are questions that all of us need to ask ourselves when we start up our businesses. So having said that, BoardPack, for those of you who haven't used it, is a board meeting automation solution for companies. It's a Sri Lankan brand, and in our case, our business model is to go global. As Harsha mentioned, actually, his company too is very similar in that sense. The first stage was to go after the region, that 4.5 billion population that is right next to us. I believe we've achieved it fairly successfully. We are having a dominance in this market. And the next step is to go global, which is quite a different thing. So I just want to also mention there's a myth in Asia. There's, let's say, 4.5 billion people, and right next door in India, there's about 1.3 billion people. And we only went with BoardPack last year in 2017 to India. And this is because as Sri Lankans, we keep thinking Indians are not going to buy Sri Lankan software. It's always a remark that comes back. But then we thought, why not? Let's try. There's nothing wrong with trying. And it's an amazing market. It's huge. They welcome us. And for those of you who are doing companies, I would recommend or I would encourage you to try it out. So starting off, if you look at this, there's the Reserve Bank of India. That's the main central bank of India. They're using Sri Lankan technology. They're using us. Lots of the banks, this is only a little section like the Bombay Stock Exchange, HDFC, Canara, so many Forbes ranked companies in India adopted this Sri Lankan technology. So it's really possible. And as I mentioned, there's a very strong uptake of these solutions across the Asian continent. I want to also mention in terms of business models, ours is B2B. So, and also our audience is a mature audience. So we had to do a mix of traditional as well as the pure digital economy based activities. Because if you take a direct B2C type of thing, you could have done everything from Sri Lanka and not really have a presence in those countries. But in our case, we had to do that, so it was a little more difficult, but essentially, it still can be done. So the channels were important, and I believe the channels are anyway important because in order to localize your products, it is important to have those local channels available. So we've taken on, as you can see, a lot of the telcos which have strong branding in those markets and taken our product forward. So as I mentioned, the whole premise is going global. And from the moment going global is in the plan, now it becomes really important that the speed to achieve a leadership in the marketplace has to be part of this business model. So essentially, I mean, if you talk about if you're going overseas, you can't really go in a car. You have to select your vessel. So you have to, go and buy your tickets for your airplane or something like that. So that's a simplistic way of saying it, but essentially, I believe, and for us, it was a mindset change that we play and deal with different types of groups in order to go global. First thing is, we had to carve out our market space where we are the strongest. So it's the top end. It's the Forbes, the top end. In every country, it's the top 500 companies, not the smaller companies. And then as soon as you mark that space, it becomes quite quiet. It's not a busy space. And in our case, there's two. And these are the players that we know that we have to go after. And this is for global market leadership. Once you decide on these competitors, we went after looking at the best people who could help us. And in the US, basically, we went head on and got people from those leadership brands. And in fact, the leadership brand in the US is Diligent. And they cannot compete with us in Asia. We beat them every time. And in the US, we pretty much acquired people who set up Diligent, and they work for the Sri Lankan company. So it's basically, once you decide on it, you can just go ahead and make those steps and put up your business model. So as I mentioned, for us, really speed to market, speed to get to the largest market share is really the most important thing. All this time, at the beginning, we were doing organic growth in terms of sales, basically putting salespeople, putting channels. That's the traditional way we do things. But as soon as this global market share situation is in the cards, the acquisitions of miscellaneous competitors around to grow really rapidly also comes into play. So this is another aspect that we are strongly working on in order to achieve this and become the market leader. So all that was about sales, and the other area, of course, is the branding. So as I mentioned, this is a boardroom automation product, the case study I'm talking about. So talking about the premium boardroom branding is what we are doing. So if you talk about, let's say, in the digital economy, if you're doing a B2C product, for example, it will be quite different. You might have to come up with some sort of the simplest or the most convenient or various other themes in order to get some kind of global market leadership. And again, finally, I just want to mention that the global brand positioning is of importance, and it's something we would really encourage the other companies in Sri Lanka too, in terms of whether it's becoming a unicorn or becoming listed in Forbes. And we strongly believe that it's possible if we set our mind to it and go ahead. I think I finished a little early. It's okay, right? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So, thank you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Lakmini, for saving some time. So, Dulith, you can take more time now. So, of course, I do have some questions around some of the business models that you have adopted in your journey competing globally. So, we will do that during the Q&A. So, the next presenter is someone I don't need to introduce. It's a pioneer in e-commerce in the country. But what's quite significant, I mean, I know this guy for like almost 3 decades from the school days. He's been creating business models when he was in school and running a business at that age. So Dulith is someone who did a disruptive product. I would call it a born digital product in the fulfillment space, the last mile delivery space with his new Grasshoppers venture. So over to you, Dulith, to share new business models around e-commerce and how the fulfillment landscape is changing.
Thanks, Harsha, and good evening, guys. No slides, and I'm definitely not going to take all that time. It's going to be short, because we have more time for questions then. So, when it comes to business models, I really want to stick to this topic of business models in the digital age. Technically, there's about 8 different business models. If you just Google it up for digital business models, you'll find out these 8. But there's about 6 that are very interesting. Anyone out of that 6, I want to pick a few. There's this whole experience business model, right? What that means is, example would be like Tesla. Why Tesla is thriving, one of the main features of the business model is people want to experience this car. It's really based on experience. And then there's there's a free model, Facebook. Nobody's paying for it here. Right? It's a business model. It works. It makes a lot of money. The consumers don't really pay a cent on it. So it's a free model. And then there's this ecosystem model, which is, example, Google. Right? We are doing searches. They are giving us a result. Somebody is selling you the ads. Right? It's really an ecosystem of locations, reviews, search results, advertising, AI being sold, data being sold to companies. So it's really an ecosystem that works. And then there's the on-demand business model. These are all business digital models. Obvious examples. I know you're already thinking of it. There's Ubers, There is Booking.com. There is all these ecosystem in Airbnb. I don't need to mention all these names. You guys are now very top of mind. And when Harsha started, he talked about the MRI, also not the MRI, the ECG on your watch. These kind of shock treatments being given to us over and over, right? Next month I will wake up in the morning and find another shock treatment. But I want to explain the fundamentals really behind these and the common pieces in these business models, so you may understand how to fit it in your expertise. So I'll talk about 3 things quickly. So I do 3 things these days, primarily e-commerce, then delivery or fulfillment, or you call it last mile delivery, that's grasshoppers, and then also we are getting into the payment space. So I want to take 3 simple business cases and explain how the digital business model kind of makes sense. So let's look at e-commerce. By definition, it is a business model that is based on digital, right? So why am I not walking into Crescat and buying a good pen today and just going to a website and buying this? Simple. This pen stays in a warehouse for me. I don't have, there is no shop front to it. There's no people coming into it. It's been promoted, sold, the discount system, the delivery, the returns, entirely is a different business model compared to the next door Crescat store that is selling the same SKU with the same exact product, mostly for a higher price. We have people walking into Unity Plaza, checking out a phone in front of them. Let's say Samsung J7, very average, very widely used phone, and going to Takas or Wow or Kapruka and buying it in front of the product. Same product, right? Why? That's a different business model. On your app, it's a different business model from your experience right in front of you. He's holding the phone, but he's buying it on a different platform. So I'm still talking about the e-commerce piece. See how easy it is for me to market this product across 3 different platforms, starting from Google to Facebook to Instagram, immediately understand results, immediately find out, do an A/B test. Within 8 hours, I can shut down the promotion or continue, decide to spend more money, introduce another product, which you cannot do on the traditional business model. Right? Now, let's take another example. Let's take kangaroo cabs, for example. Okay? It was a business model that was, for a long time, all of us knew this brand so well. And suddenly, there was a different business model that came and compared itself with it, which used the shared economy and disrupted it. And Kangaroo managed to actually come out of it by changing their business model to adapt. They're not out of business. They're doing great, actually. They spend a lot of money to reinvent themselves and quickly fix the problem, because there was another business model coming and parking right next to it. So Kangaroo and Uber Pick Me story is a very classic example of how a business model just simply came in and changed everything. So grasshoppers, it is really last mile delivery. This company is doing thousands of deliveries a day now for about 90% of e-commerce players in Sri Lanka today. But do you know how many staff I have? Just 20 full-time employees, including the CEO. That's the strength of a strong digital business model. If you look at the balance sheet of grasshoppers, it has stuff like mousepad and chair. The assets. If you look at all business models that has worked and look at the net asset value of that company, you'll be shocked, because they have nothing, just very lightweight. Look at, if you check, how many of you know how many people, WhatsApp is valued at billions, but there's only like 45 employees and a whole server rack, and just nothing compared to a comparatively same valued company with all these assets. If you look at the Tesla net asset value, it's negative. A lot of people say that's a bad thing, but it's essentially very, very lightweight stuff. So if you look at the grasshoppers model, how we pick up a product is very different. There are drop boxes that we are creating, so people can actually come and drop the products to us, so we don't have to go and pick it up. By just simply doing that, we dropped the price of a pickup from 15 rupees to 75 cents. Simply within the business model changing, going to that kind of simplification. And the middle mile, where the truckloads of things, going from Colombo to Anuradhapura and Colombo to Ratnapura to Mana, those areas, hubs, are done sometimes using a foot rider on a bus, not on a butt or truck. Why? Why can he do that? Because we've enabled a mobile app on him. We track the guy. If he goes missing, we know where he is. If he's not, so it's all monitored through technology. So because of that, we can use a very lean and very simple stuff on the ground, an asset, a human asset. We call them a foot soldier, to do the middle mile. And the last mile is always done through bikes and other small vehicles, but that's also been very well tracked by the app. When you are doing the delivery, we geotag the doorstep, so when you are doing another delivery, we know exactly where that house is. Even a teenager can go and deliver it, because there is not much difficulty in finding the addresses. We have a large database of addresses being built on a daily basis as I speak, where this geotagging of doorsteps are happening. And we sell this back to e-commerce players, like Daras, etc., even for them to be able to address verify quickly and push the orders to us so we can do faster delivery. So this is all run on this business model. And again, payments. So that is something that we are just getting into. There is too many, that pay and this pay is coming. Right? It's really a confusion, actually, in my opinion. So why something goes viral is, I believe it's because if it is very simple only. Something has to be ultra simple in order for it to go viral. Otherwise, you have to spend big bucks on marketing the thing, and you have to be ready to burn a lot of money just marketing your product, because why? It's not naturally going viral. Right? So we are introducing something called don't pay. Right? So you pay, that pay, this pay, PayPal and all that. So this is like a kind of a pay later model, simply saying don't pay. So that itself, you created a simplicity in your head, and that probably will enable us to do and challenge the current, payment wallets with a complete different business model. Essentially, it is a different business model. Right? So, virality is a very fundamental piece in this that I want to keep talking about. For any tech-based product, especially if you look at this great product that, the board pack that was just brought up here, which I'm very proud of, is probably run really through the virality. I was sitting next to Dammika here telling him, hey, did you try it out? I'm already using board pack in my board meetings, because I just got to know it from Harsha the day before yesterday. I already got 3 guys to sign up, 0 marketing. That's the quick synopsis of how really, digital business models have, changed my life and what I do. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dulith. Actually, you all have finished your presentations quite fast and put me under pressure, a lot of pressure now. I would like to start the first question relating to you first, then take up with Dammika and Lakmini.